or YouTube. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons so you don't miss anything from us in the future. Lei and I are two of the most knowledgeable people in the world doing this, so help us get the word out about this show to others. My name is Tu Lee. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to at sinoautoinsights.substack.com. Lei, can you please? Oh, a Xi'an-based Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, live from Xi'an. I had to ditch my family for this because they're doing the touristy stuff. So I ran back to the hotel for this episode. But yes, coming to you live from Xi'an. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 215, right? Because we missed last week.
215.
Yeah, the Independence Day. And yeah, I'm in
Oh,
Xi'an. But a little bit
so,
about Xi'an.
yeah, history of Xi'an. What's the most
Oh,
important thing that most people know about Xi'an?
the most important thing that people usually know about Xi'an is first of all, it's the ancient capital of China of 13 dynasties. Second of all, it's the terracotta warriors. But over recent years, this grand town hall, the Chinese call the 大唐不夜城, has been more popular. So I just came from that area.
Tinda.
Luckily,
Okay.
I took the metro. I'll post some videos. But the other thing about Xi'an, as much as it is steeped in deep history, this is where BYD started its automotive journey. And believe it or not, the Qin, Han, Tang, Song, Yuan, the five dynasties are also their vehicle models. And of all those five dynasties, Xi'an was the ancient capital. So some correlation with Xi'an, BYD, and the automotive stuff. So it's good to kind of make the connection of why kind of BYD named their at least the Dynasty series models the way they did. Um, and I'll tell you what, definitely is the city of BYDs. But if we just look at what's on the streets, what do you think the second most popular brand of EVs I see on the street? What do you think it is?
Hmm. Uh,
From my perspective, at least,
Second most popular. I want to. SAIC pops into my head, but
it's Tesla. After BYD, it's Tesla. The reason
okay.
why is what I see the most. And so this is where we get into kind of the July sales numbers, BYD, Tesla, right? There's been some news on Elon Musk on what he's been up to. The June sales, right? June sales just came out. I'll give you a chance to kind of, jump in and we talk about the sales a little bit. Did that
So
surprise you?
it doesn't. It doesn't. You know, Tesla's been very strong in China since it entered the market. Well, since Shanghai Gigafactory. But I think we're at an inflection point because they don't have any new vehicles. The U7's out. We're going to talk about the L90. and a few other cars that are coming out. The i60, I think, or i80 or i8
I8, I8.
um, is being shown, and then obviously this week the 9X uh,
Oh,
was unveiled by
Li Bin
Zeekr.
took a dig at the 9X. We can talk about
So,
that.
so one thing about the 9X is that you mentioned Tesla. It has a 70 kilowatt hour battery. It's a hybrid. It's an EREV, and the current Model Y standard range battery size is 60 kilowatt hours. So as a hybrid, the 9X has a larger battery pack um, than the Model Y standard range. So
Go
that's
figure.
what
Go
Tesla
figure.
is going up against.
Yeah.
And Xpeng, they're already like hold my beer with their EREV that's coming out, because their EREV's going to get well over 1,000 kilometers, I think, of range. But you know, a couple of other things about BYD: they now have 1 million cars with God's Eye on the roads. They launched a partnership we'll talk about in a little bit with effectively like a Hertz, right? The car um, rental company, or not BYD. Sorry, that's I'm mixing things up. Two B's. I'm getting a little bit confused here.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes, and BYD actually is now going to insure you, or it's on them. If you use their parking function in God's Eye and there's any accidents with any damage, they will pay for it.
That's
So,
part of the bloodbath. If we
yes,
don't cut prices, we do something else.
for sure. So, technically, they're not uh, not disobeying, but technically, they're not cutting price. So, it's in line with the Chinese government saying, hey, cut this stuff out. But we know that there are other ways to incentivize consumers that don't have anything to do with the price, because I don't think anyone at this point in time, year 3.5, almost year 4 of the price war, I don't think anyone wants to cut price anymore. And so, um, yeah,
But
uh,
the the
go
the,
ahead.
the competition is still intense nonetheless because the last well, starting with the U7 and then it was the G7 and it was the this earlier this week, the yesterday, the Onvo L90 on the same day the new Leapmotor C11 launched, right?
Yep.
There was another. Oh, there was the Chery A9L. It's almost like the cheaper Stellato S9, but only 140, like $20,000. Huge car, right? Also a hybrid. And then uh, IA, as we talked about, coming at the end of this month. So a series. I think I've never seen within such a short time so many of these so-called Model Y killers launching in this short period of time. While um, Model Y, I think, has it. The way to put it is that these series of Model Y killers that's being launched, that have been launched, have not taken a huge hole or has not made a huge dent. Although Tesla is losing market shares in China, that's kind of the interesting thing that we're seeing. If I'm being a Tesla stan, uh,
Well, it points to the resilience of the brand, because the product is not competitive, and from a price standpoint and from a feature standpoint. So it points to, yeah, there are still a number of Chinese consumers that really are being a Tesla stand doesn't mean you're only in the West. Let's just say that.
One theory to the Model Y specifically has been relatively resilient is the fact that leading up to the U7 launch, and all of these models comparing, if they do these comparison PowerPoint slides, more often than not, Model Y would be on the second column. One theory is that this is kind of inadvertently a marketing for Tesla, because the consumers would think, hey, they're benchmarking against Tesla. Tesla must be good, and I don't have to wait as much. And they're offering um, competitive financing on the vehicle. Uh, it's an
Other
international.
companies are doing that now too, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Neo, the 556, and
Yeah.
the new Champion editions, right? I tweeted. And you alluded earlier about not having the product, but recent days there's been rumors about this smaller Model Y, um, Model Q, Model 2, whatever, the spy shots, all of these photos coming out of the factory. So, well, it's a new but not new product, but hopefully soon enough we'll see it.
So I'm going to be in Beijing on the 28th, I think. So we'll have to get together with our families, and I'm not going to be there the entire time. My wife is going to be with the boys, but I'll need to go to Southeast Asia, Singapore, for a couple days. I haven't figured all that stuff out, but we should definitely do what we can with the latest robotaxis in Beijing. Yizhuang, go down, check out BYD or Baidu or whatever, and then I'm looking forward to it because when we go in April, it's always a frenzy. There's always somewhere to be, someone to talk to. This is a family trip that I'm turning into more of a business-like thing.
Get
So,
ready for the heat. I'm warning you.
well, isn't it so? Which one of the four cities in China are the four furnaces?
So
Is
Xi'an, man,
Yes.
normally we were very lucky. It was only in the low 30s. But starting today, we're leaving tomorrow, but starting today it was like 38, and it's going to be close to 40. So Xi'an is definitely one of it. Chongqing, Wuhan, and I think Nanjing are together the
I
four.
thought it was Nanjing too.
Yeah. But Beijing has
So
been pretty
mild.
humid lately. So, and I was joking. Speaking of Baidu, I was joking with Baidu PR people. You launched this, you announced this collaboration with Car Inc. But sorry, it's Wuhan only. It's something interesting that you can kind of rent a robotaxi for more than a few days.
In Wuhan, is the local government is very supportive, more than every other city so far, because almost every major robotaxi company has a pilot in Wuhan. They do robotaxi buses in Wuhan on the highways too. So
Yeah, so I say Wuhan is definitely one of the maybe the capital of Baidu, if not for capital of robotaxi.
and we
Baidu
should give
robotaxi.
Wuhan some props because it is a Detroit. It is one of the Detroits in China. There's Shanghai, there's Beijing to a lesser extent. I don't think Beijing and Shanghai, they have factories, but a lot of it is because the companies that reside there. And then you go to Dongbei. What's the city in Dongbei that has not Harbin? I
Well,
forget.
it's
That has
Changchun
the
or Dalian or Shenyang.
Chang Changchun has some
Changchun, yeah, yeah,
factories,
yeah.
and then because of BYD down south in Shenzhen, and then Xpeng has Guangzhou, but Wuhan is definitely a major automotive hub. So that's also why a lot of companies, and the weather is great, generally speaking. I've never actually been to Wuhan. No, no, I take that back. I have been to Wuhan. I take that back.
Well, yeah, yeah, I mean, I love to go, just experience actually the robotaxis and being able to rent. I mean, it's a new concept. Rent a robotaxi for hours and for days. Don't know how that works, but
你看.
oh, okay, do it. Hey, Will, please just download the the
Car.
Robo Kuaipao app and then try to rent a robotaxi for a few days. If
Did
you
you
can do
bring
it,
your Pocket 3, Will? Show us. Send us try to is it has it launched or they just announced it?
I think it's launched. I think you can do it. You can kind of starting
But
yesterday or
you
something.
probably need a uh local because
Identity
some of
card,
the
yeah,
Baidu services you can't
yeah,
do it
yeah,
if you have a foreign passport. So
yeah, yeah.
so Will, who's on the live stream right now, he runs a content platform called China Driven for the folks that have not seen his videos. Um,
Very quirky videos. Yeah.
yes,
So
very Will is great, super knowledgeable, very opinionated. That's what we love because he's not going to sugarcoat the things that he likes and the things that he doesn't like. But yeah, and so what else can we talk about?
well, yeah. I mean, just quickly on the big numbers. I'm looking at my one of the WeChat. The June, because we're at past the midway point, which is kind of reflecting back on the first half of the year. Total auto sales over 15 million. NEV sales nearly 7 million. Auto export over 3 million. These are the big numbers. But if we think about it, second half of the year will always be higher. So 7 million first half, probably just guesstimate over 8 million in the second half. Total 15 million, which I think we talked about earlier episode. That this year China will sell as many as NEVs as the US sells light vehicles. That's kind of the big picture we're looking at. And the
and the
45% in
the
June.
total China passenger vehicle market will be larger than the European and the US market combined.
And yeah, and then uh, speaking of some of the ones that are not, some are hot. The not ones, these are familiar names: Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, all down double digits. First half, not surprising. Porsche, they sold 21,000 units in the first half of the year in China. It's
Let me give the audience a sense of how how far they've fallen. Porsche in its best years would sell just over 350, 360 global units. About 50% of their sales comes from the Macan and the Cayenne, driven a lot by the China market. So the US and China markets were their leading markets, with China, and you correct me if I'm wrong, getting to about 85,000 units or 80-ish thousand units.
China
So
at the top was over 90,000, close to
yeah, okay.
100,000 units in its prime.
So
Yeah.
we're 7 months into the year and they're at 21,000 units. They're not going to get close to 90,000 units. So let's say they get to 50 or 60. And remember that they only ship from Europe. And with the European market down, so they just made an announcement, sales are down in China, sales are down in Europe. Sales are up a little bit in the United States. The US market is not going to make up for the losses in China, let alone the losses in China and Europe. And so when you're only building 350 to 380,000 vehicles, a 50,000 unit hit from one country is a massive, massive injury, a massive hit to sales. And what's kind of telling, Lei, and you and I, only 5, 6 years ago, would see a lot of Chinese media asking the Porsche executives who were smiling ear to ear because they saw nothing but growth since entering the market in 2001. The Chinese media would always be like, are you going to build locally? And so there's no chance that they're building in China now.
They were
They
getting
might
close
actually have to shut some facilities down or lower their output, their capacity. So
because one of the comments that one of the previous Porsche China CEOs made back in the day was, when we get close to 100,000 units, we may consider producing locally. So they were
but he was
almost
just teasing. He was just teasing.
yeah. And you talk about the injury. Well, the biggest insult to injury, the biggest salt on the wound, guess who it is? It was Xiaomi. They sold over 300,000 units in 15 months. Well, mostly, I'd say 99% SU7s, because they just started
Well,
delivering the youth,
I think we
right?
can say that they're all Su-7s. The 300,000 are
Yeah,
all Su-7s.
right. But think about it. A year from now, what do you think that number is going to be when it's 30 months? I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. It may get close to 1 million. That's what we're looking at. If
So,
everything goes smoothly.
so he, and it's going to ruin a lot of companies. The combination of BYD and Xiaomi pushing or grabbing sales from all these players, because it's bad enough that BYD has taken sales, but now with the addition of the U7 and the Su7, now we start thinking about, is this the straw that broke the camel's back, and which companies should we watch more closely that might actually have to go out of business?
So one of the things I remember just a few days ago, the MIT actually came out with the online system where suppliers could submit complaints, or it's a system following that 60-day payment agreement promise that was announced like a month ago, that almost every automaker promised. So there's actually a system, online system, where you're going to be watched, right? These are some of the things in the back that going to force you to uh, uh, do the things the right way, at least from a a
Well,
regulatory.
the central government
Yeah.
wants them, but
Some order, some
the
order.
the OEMs will find a way.
Yeah.
If they continue to see pressure from BYD and other companies on downward price pressure, the weaker players will find a way, and they'll be called out for it, because the central government does want some order. They're very concerned about the whole involution thing that we've talked about in the past. And uh, what's your opinion? I don't see the intensity of the competition changing significantly in any way this year. Now,
No.
maybe it lets up in Chinese New Year of 2026 and then kind of settles, but we'll have been 4 years into the price war. So it's not like this was this blink of an eye. 4 years of just holding on, if you're an OEM or a Chinese EV maker that's one of the weaker players, that's a long time. And
Yeah.
you might have entities, provinces large cities helping fund some of the weaker players, subsidizing, but these cities, they run out of money too. It's not like they have money in perpetuity. So
That's one of the actually things. There was some recent news about the subsidies not being made, um, not enough to support the demand for these kind of subsidies, right? Um, yeah,
so
sure, yeah, early warning, yeah. I mean, it's yeah.
in we do know, when you're there now, Lei, it isn't the same as it was 10 years ago. The
Uh,
the the, the economy is,
uh,
first of all, the base is larger. So to grow at 5-6% is much more difficult. And there is a concern amongst a lot of Chinese about being able to keep their job and things like that. So
I'll tell you something. Well, this is not EV related, but having been in Xi'an the last few days, this is my third time. First time since 2019. Uh, I was a little bit of surprised that how the Xi'an is one of the most culturally diverse, vibrant, young, active city that I've ever been to. Uh, and sometimes you right, we do these touristy stuff. People mountain, people sea is the Chinese way of seeing this. Are they spending as much? It's a question mark, but at least I don't see some of the way that it's being portrayed about. I mean, there's economic pressure, but I mean, I feel like Xi'an is a more vibrant city than Beijing. Some of the other smaller tier cities. The reason being, I think there's more lax uh, control on kind of these street stalls. You don't see those anymore in Beijing, right? Just one observation that I'm throwing out there. That sometimes hey, I could be living in Xi'an, and it's a fun city. Uh, and sometimes you feel like the Beijing being the political capital of China is there's more kind of control on what can be done. Uh, uh, right, a lot of new we economy, meaning live streamers, people are on the street trying to we're tourists, right? You want to take pictures, right? There's these photographers on the streets because Xi'an is a very historical but also um, culturally because of the history and the Grand Tong Mall that they have.
the Muslim
But it's just
corridor.
only one observation. So
Yeah, I actually haven't been to Xi'an in quite some time, uh,
yeah, so
but
uh,
Xi'an is how I would, uh,
Xi'an, put it this way, Xi'an is at the top of China's tier two city list, but I would say it's probably getting close to a pseudo new tier one city. The new tier one cities being Hangzhou. Hangzhou is a new tier one city. The tier one cities are Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Shanghai, right? Beishang, Guangshen. But Xi'an I think, is getting up there. Um,
yeah.
the-
So
yeah,
I think Qingdao is another tier two that turning into tier one. There's a
yeah.
handful. It's Hey,
Uh,
Will, is Changsha a new tier one
Hangzhou is
city? I don't think it is yet,
definitely a
right?
tier two. I'd say it's
Yeah,
a tier one, a tier two, not a new tier one. It's a
right.
tier two. Yeah.
So the two things that I always tell people when they come to China for the first time or visit China for the first time, the things that they'll remember: the terracotta soldiers and the Great Wall. Those are the two things I always enjoy seeing, experiencing. The Great Wall is just really, really mind blowing, and it's just an amazing scene.
Yeah.
And because it's in so close to Beijing, it was pretty easy. Hour drive for an hour, drive for an hour and a half, and you're at the wall. And then so we did hikes and spent a lot of time in my friends' villas there. So, but man, it is. Yeah. Anyways, so what else? Oh, one thing
we
that. Go ahead.
no, I mean we can talk about the Onvo L90 a little bit because uh, one of the things that happened was this was the longest. Even I thought the Neo Day last year, December in Guangzhou, Li Bin spent quite a long time talking about the ET9 and the Firefly, but he spent 3 freaking hours talking about the Onvo L90, and he's not even the CEO of the brand. So that's something that I always think about when I think about Neo is that Li Bin is Neo's what's the word?
He's the
Like
Neo whisperer.
he's the person that's kind of holds everything. That even I mean for Onvo, a sub brand launch, new model launch, he's the person up on the stage talking about the
He
vehicle
so
forward.
so he's the more
Which
emotional guy of the Li
yeah,
Xiang and the He Xiaopeng, and he feels like he's trying to will his companies to
yeah,
success.
will and try, right? Try meaning himself talking for 3 hours. Try meaning they did a stunt, 10,000 kilometers in an Onvo L60, battery swapping its way across China in 90 hours, right? They're just trying to show, uh, trying to sell basically, and I kind of think this L90 carries so much burden, so much weight, uh, because he did
It's
that.
it's it's always the next product that carries that weight.
And
Because before that, it was the Firefly, and so
yeah, but
uh,
Neo is
oh,
11 years old. They've launched, I don't know, a dozen models across 3 brands. Can you think of one model that has consistently sold over 10,000 units a month?
well,
There have not. So
that's why you feel for him because he does seem like he's trying to will success into his products. And I think he's perplexed like you and I and China Driven and some of these other people. The products are good. It's not like, oh man, this is not going to succeed. It's a complete piece of trash.
yeah,
Neo's vehicles are not bad. They're really good. Some of them are close to great. I think the ET9 is super super cool. I haven't driven it. I've sat inside for a bit. I'd like to drive it when I get back. But
oh yeah.
I I I think I almost feel he's like, I don't know what is going on here. Why we can't have one runaway success. And the fact that the U7 got so much, I'm sure the guys at Xpeng, I'm sure the guys at Li Auto, at Neo, they're all like, hmm. And I'd written in last week's newsletter, I said that I hope the Western CEOs are watching this and are taking copious notes because this is probably globally, Lay. Can you think of in the last 5 years any other vehicle that had gotten this much ink? I can't think of one.
Well, uh,
Maybe a Cybertruck, but that's a large.
I mean the Su7 and the U7 are two Model 3 moments basically.
Mhm.
Maybe the U7 more, but uh, what I thought was interesting was I mentioned about Li Bin taking a dig at maybe the 7X, but maybe the EREVs in general. He was like, "Why carry the baggage when you why, why carry the baggage? Baggage meaning an engine and range extender, on the vehicle, and then he's like, "Oh, I hope the i8 launch a success," because he's like, "Oh, we love BEVs, you know, but no EREVs. Let's not buy EREVs." Basically, that's what
So
he's saying.
so this is what Trent Driven says. My Neo videos on Billy always have one or two people saying the same thing. I don't want someone else's old battery, which is a little weird, but
Yeah,
because yeah, okay, fair enough. But uh, so one thing I wanted to highlight because I think it's a great article was a Reuters article a week ago from Nick Carey and our friend Nori Hirozu. They highlighted in the very early parts of the article that Chery had a Euro spec Omada 7,
hmm
and they knew the suspension was designed for Chinese roads. So if you go to old Europe, a lot of old brick roads. And so they wanted to make a design change before they started shipping and create a Euro spec Omada. It took them 6 weeks to do that. And in my experience, when you're completely changing out a suspension system in a vehicle, that takes an entire model year for most legacies.
I
So
mean, well, the you can call it, maybe call it cutting corners. That's the bad way of putting it. But you can also say it's China speed, right? Maybe it's somewhere in between. But
so
the
so
fact
so
is that
we'll see whether long-term quality and reliability is at risk because these vehicles are brand new and they're just
yeah,
shipping. We can look at it in many different ways. Cutting corners is one way to look at it, but we can also look at it like the Germans over engineer, maybe the Americans over engineer. So because if you talk to the Chinese EV makers, they'll swear that they're not uh and the Chinese government is also really scrutinizing that too, like the quality and the cutting corners that you're referring to. But I don't think none that I've spoken with feel like, oh, we're moving too fast and we're missing things. I think they really lean into their current processes and say, we have as much confidence as any legacy automaker that our product is high quality, very reliable.
the
So
the other thing to mention, I think, very importantly, when the kind of from the foreign lens looking at the China EV market, is not the China speed of how things come out quickly, but the China speed of uh, how they learn fast. And the Onvo L90 is the perfect example because L60 launch was kind of had many issues. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to say disaster, but if we saw a few days ago those images of L90s lined up, that means they're ready to deliver. The same things happened with the U7 not long after launch. Same things with the G7. And the part of the problem with the L60 was one, kind of their network, the availability of the model, and the lack of availability of the swap network. Those things are gone. So you would imagine the L90, after learning these lessons, that's why I say it should be a volume, it should be a runner, right? And that's the learn from one model's mistake and not trying to repeat it. I think you do see a lot of that in the in almost all of these competitors.
we always have to lean back and refer back to the fact that China economically is a very young country. They didn't have these established manufacturing processes like the legacy automakers do that, that they rely on heavily, because these processes are very rigid. They're very analog, they're very mechanical. And the vehicles that are being produced in China are not. They're complete opposite. So I almost look at it like maybe the old way is not evolving fast enough for the new type of product. And again, and Will, let me ask you pointedly, you have an ET7, you've had it now for what, 2.5 years, almost 3 years, I think. How's the quality and reliability been for you? I haven't heard you complain about it. I haven't spoken with you in quite some time, but if you're still listening, put a comment in there, because uh, I don't hear about major quality issues from my friends who have Chinese electric vehicles.
I do
So
remember that whenever these new models from these brands launched, they offer significant, well, not significant, but they offer special discounts for existing owners buying additional vehicles. And more often than not, many of these loyal owners, they own multiple Neos, they own multiple Xpengs, they own multiple uh, Neos, right? So yeah, right. Will says
I,
never
I
had a
just
problem.
think
Okay, you
effectively, Lay, the West has a lot to learn from the Chinese EV makers. Now, whether that's a pride thing that doesn't allow them to do that, some of it is
I,
just a big company versus small company, nimble company, because we can't expect a General Motors to instantly adopt Apple processes and policies, Google processes and policies. So some of it is just physical constraints. A lot of it is cultural, but some of it is also we need to point at leadership not being able to make these drastic changes either. And so,
eh, look at how Mercedes learning. I'm looking at this tweet of pre-sale of the new CL8, right? The battery electric CL8. If you order by August 1st, you get a free upgrade to a different trim. If you order by September 1st, you get a lesser discount. If you order right before the launch date, you get a lesser discount. So, right, different ways to entice you to come out and purchase.
one last thing I'll talk about quality, Lay, is that Western analysts and audiences and OEMs, they talk about the risk because, to your point, I don't hear that from the Western automakers, the cutting corners, but it's implied a little bit. Uh, I don't think they want to go out there and extend themselves and say that these companies are cutting corners, but it's implied. But then you point back to Ford, who's written $2 billion a year for the last 4 years in warranty issues. So don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. Your processes, your warranty costs, they need to be bulletproof if you're going to be accusing people of cutting corners and having vehicles that in 5 years from now will be falling apart because you didn't build a physical prototype for your door handle or whatever, and you didn't test it over X number of miles in the real world. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not a technical person, but all I do know is that, again, because you and I live there so long, because we still get in these cars multiple times a year, I don't see any difference between, first of all, I think the designs are better, generally speaking, the Chinese brands. And then second of all, if you get into a Tesla, it's not great. And I would argue that the Teslas in China are built better than the Teslas in the United States.
Yes.
But anyways, so for those that are curious, it's a Reuters article. Nick Carey Norihiko Shirozu. They wrote a longer piece. It's worth the read. I forget what the article is called, but it's in my newsletter for those that subscribe to the newsletter. Anything else that I wanted to talk about or bring up, but you can riff a little bit. Have you been to the Muslim Quarter yet, Lay?
Yes, I have.
So can you tell
All kinds.
people what's this big deal about the Muslim Quarter?
It's 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 well. Well, one of the things about it is that you cannot put too much control over that area of right, and then the other thing is just the food.
Yes, the food. That's what I meant. Hey, oh,
Yeah,
hey, we should actually talk about this because Cui Dongshu, he said when on
the
July
PDCA.
4th, yeah, he said the one big beautiful bill is really an advantage China EV Inc. when that passed. Because
Well, yeah.
I wrote this, hold on a second. I wrote this in my newsletter. He he said, I quote, intelligent EV models against the obsolete technology of internal combustion engine vehicles. So, and I got a, so I sent the newsletter out yesterday morning. Within an hour and a half of sending it out, I get 6 or 7 emails. This week's newsletter hits hard. And part of it is because I riffed on my agreement with Cui Dongshu about, guys, this is really, really um, going to make us uncompetitive. So,
Yeah, it's the Trump stimulus, right? I think we mentioned this or joked about this earlier in the year.
yeah.
And the
Anyways,
tariff thing is still very fluid. It's a roller coaster. I mean, today we agree, next day we don't. Day after we agree again. uh, yeah, I mean, and then I think China is just it is just full steam ahead on the EVs.
actually, let me ask you, like, since we did not talk about this, anything stood out on the June sales side? I saw the numbers too, but anything that stood out to
Um,
you?
I mean, there was a strategic kind of a retrench from Li Auto because also from a managerial point of view, they kind of had a shuffle, all because they want to make sure this I series model launches are a success, and they made sure they have the supercharging network ready. Right, this was mentioned last year because they delayed the launch till this year. So if we look at a 1 month or a 1 weekly kind of up and down, I can't draw any conclusions. Don't be like, oh my God.
Summer's tough.
Yeah.
Summer sales numbers are tough.
Yeah. So for June, usually it's higher, anyways. But for some specific examples, it may not be the case. Uh, but
One of
Xpeng, right? First half already more than the full year 2024.
Brian
So
Gu and He Xiaopeng must be feeling pretty
they're,
good. Sarah must
yeah,
be
I
feeling
think
pretty
they're
good.
they're kind of on cloud nine, but
Well, you know, but they can only pat themselves on the back for about an
I
hour before they need to get back at it because what Xiaomi is doing, I know for a fact, and what I know Neo is doing is pulling in production of the L90. Li Auto's pulling in production of the i8. So Xpeng needs to be pulling in production of the G7 and make, to your point 2 weeks ago. Hey, you don't have to wait a year for a U7. My car is just as good and it's available in 6 weeks. That's what they're all doing.
yeah, and also the what else was going? Oh, I'd say speaking of BYD is actually we're looking at their monthly numbers. At some point, it's been below 400,000 units. At some point, how do they get if they want to get to 5.5 million? Uh, I think at some point in the second half of the year, they have to get to 500,000. How do
Unfortunately,
they do it? I
for
think they're
BY
facing extreme pressure from Geely because Geely's
and
EV,
Chery.
yeah, and Chery. Uh, so that's something to watch. Because when you're at the top, it's just so much harder to grow higher, as we said before.
And this goes back to Sam Livingstone, the car design research guys, that BYD is now known as almost like the low price. And so they need to establish themselves in a multi-dimensional way. The brand does. And I think we see Zeekr separating itself a little bit from a branding standpoint. I think they lean into that a little bit heavier, a little bit more heavily than a BYD. But they seem to kind of be this one trick pony like Tesla. I'm just going to cut price again. I'm just going to cut price again. Because does God's Eye, offering God's Eye standard, does that move the needle to your point about getting over 500,000? Does guaranteeing that you're not going to be out of pocket for any accidents using the parking feature on God's Eye, does that move the needle? They've they've trained the Chinese consumer to only really buy when there's another price cut. And you could say that more broadly about the market due to the length of time that the price war has been in, but which is unfortunate because there's so much innovation going on and we don't highlight all the cool things as much as we should. We only really talk about how cutthroat and the sales numbers and stuff. I would, I'm hoping that in the next 6 or 7 months late, you and I can be like, man, we just got out of this car. This feature is great. This feature is great, as opposed to like, man, they cut price again. They're offering 7 years of free financing, blah, blah, blah. So,
Well, I mean,
anyways.
Li Bin talked about the three-row SUV L90. It's talked about three features. I forget that it's the only SUV that offers those three features at the same time. So, right, trying to be different.
That'll change in 6 months, less than 6 months.
Yeah. So,
So, anyways, hey, I'm about done. One thing I did want to mention is that so Joe White and I have launched a platform that is much more focused on Joe's expertise, and kind of I'll throw in a little bit of my commentary, but it's called At the Wheel for those folks that are looking more for a North American view on things. We
cool.
interviewed Ed Kim recently. I just think the reason I started at Lay is because there's still a lot of uneducated folks on what's going on and how fast it needs to change. So um, that let's get to questions unless you have anything else.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so SVX, what's the market trend for EREV in China, in Europe, and its a market share relationship with PHEV and EV? Is it a better option as a transition BEV?
Well, here's a way to look at it. Xpeng is due with the EREV. Xiaomi is due with an EREV. At the same time, the Li Autos, they're kind of moving while they have these new wave of BVs coming. So I think there's both dynamics at play just because of different strategies of different companies. But I think for some time to come, I'd say until the end of this decade, EREVs and PHEVs, if you look at the Chinese market or the global market, it's going to be a significant portion that the consumers will want uh, until the end of this decade. That's kind of my way to look at it.
I want to look at this more globally, and I think EREVs will become a huge thing in the United States because we do have different use cases for what our needs are, at least professionally and commercially. The truck drivers, they do need something that can tow. And so until individual cells and modules and battery packs can get to 700-800 comfortably miles of range, and which means that if I'm towing something, it goes down to 300-400 miles. Okay, I think EREVs are going to be a thing. That being said, Ram is launching an EREV truck, so there'll be an initial backlash, but I think once that backlash dies down, people are going to be like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good. This is pretty cool." So we should see it, but where the Chinese are way ahead is their ability to design it into the vehicle. I think the Western automakers are still like, "Oh, let's base this on an ICE design and cram in this small engine and a battery pack." And so if you get into vehicles in the West, a lot of them still look like ICE vehicles that were Frankensteined into a clean energy vehicle, as opposed to
Yeah.
in China, everything's a clean sheet now. And it just kind of makes sense from the moment you grab the door handle and get in the vehicle. So
I think besides Neo, everybody's gonna have some sort of plug-in or EREV.
and STX, this is driven largely by Li Auto, who has had a ton of success with their EREVs, and with BYD, because BYD is 60-40 split, and it allows BYD to enter these 100 plus markets and say, you know what, you don't need to commit to a BEV.
I, I'd say
So
Li Bin definitely learned a lot from Li Xiang with the Onvo L90 launch, because right, it's for families, it's three-row SUVs, but it's not an EREV. It's a battery swappable SUV.
I think
So
this
yeah.
so Jeffrey is on. What's going on, Jeffrey? I think this refers back to the quality. The first time I saw Neo, I was blown away by the quality. Okay, and then um, I asked Will about any issues with his ET7. He said no problems at all. So at least intermediate term, 2-3 years, there's no quality reliability issues according to Will, and he'd tell us, he'd be honest with us if there were. Let me see here.
Oh, one of the viral videos that the L90 showed ahead of the pre-launch yesterday was a truck hitting it from behind at 50 kilometers per hour, and it was pretty sturdy. That actually had a lot of views on that, talking about safety, right? But
Chinese brands nowadays always show that
oh
in-house
yeah,
standards for
oh yeah,
safety and
always
testing
saying,
that
this
exceeds
is
national.
5x, 10x the standard.
So, I just don't think people realize that how far ahead they are on some of these things. So, Jeffrey, Tesla did a study. The Tesla car made in China had much better quality. There's so much pride in China. Fremont, no one is happy about anything. um, uh, MNSGA, make Neo stock great again. Uh,
Make Neo what?
stock great again. Xpeng readjusted, basically all rear wheel drive models. This is Will from China Driven, getting pricing correct. ADAS is now coming more to the forefront of consumer discussion. Now Xpeng is starting to reap the rewards of years of ADAS marketing. So Will, what you should keep an eye on is Australia, because Xpeng is not doing well in Australia. So
Hmm.
that's one of the markets that they're going to have to reevaluate. Jeffrey, keep up the awesome effort. We appreciate you both. I love the transmission tunnel with an EV battery. I think he's being sarcastic about that. I think Jeffrey's being sarcastic about that. So let me check LinkedIn real quick. Mark Wilcox, Farley recently called China an existential threat. thoughts. So let me start with my 2 cents. He was at an Aspen conference,
That's
and
the second time that he's mentioned, something about China. Big time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he was being interviewed by the guy that wrote
Walter Isaacson.
Isaacson. Yes,
Isaacson.
Walter. Um, and yes, he. So let's back up a little bit. Mary, weeks prior to Farley, 2 weeks ago, she was interviewed at a Wall Street Journal conference, and she said that China didn't have any technology advantage. Farley completely disagreed with her in this interview with Isaacson. I actually linked it to my newsletter 2 weeks ago. So for those people that want to watch it in full, it's a 40-minute video that I watched on 2X. So, but it is almost exactly what I think. I agree with what Farley said needs to happen for the United States to be competitive. So if you're wondering what his thoughts are, it's definitely worth watching at 2 speed or 2.5x. And he's right. I think that Mary is being disingenuous when she says that there's no lead, there's no technology lead. There's definitely a technology lead. Um, I do like what GM is doing, but then they announced that they're writing an $800 million check to double down on ICE vehicles too. So I don't know if you can be in no man's land like that. I don't know if you can sit in the middle and win. Maybe
Well,
they're not trying to win. But what do you think about this existential threat?
100% agree. And it's not like it's just recent. It's happened probably when we started doing this podcast, or even earlier,
Well,
2021, only 4 years ago.
let's think more broadly, Lay. Let's think about drones. Think what company do we think of when we think about drones?
Exactly. It's a,
What company do we think of when we think about our kids and social media? These are Chinese companies. That's innovation right there. Okay? And we don't think of Meta. Who uses Facebook anymore? My kids don't use Facebook. Kidding me? So it's just a broader. There needs to be a broader discussion about multiple sectors, not just the
but,
electric vehicles. So
but the thing is, for GM, specific to GM, what's happening in the US and in China is completely different, because in China, GM has Wuling, GM has the Buick, which launched this Electra brand, and they're uh, trying to assimilate to the Chinese ecosystem very fast by incorporating momentas, right? They're invested into momenta, but still, uh, which is not something they can do in the US
but they don't
because
want
China, right?
the
And
West to
so
know what they're doing in China.
For Mary to say that, then it's conflicting. Uh, so, but
So I'm
because
going to
she
put you
knows
on
what they have to do in China.
I'm putting you on the spot, Lay, because Will just asked who we think the next Chinese brand that's going to be in trouble is.
I saw Hengchi 5, I think. I'll post some pictures, which is like, oh, this must be one of a few hundred in China that I see.
So there's Neta.
Oh, who's uh,
He
well, Neta is already out of the conversation, I think. Who's next? I don't know.
Hypertech.
I say one of these premium brands from uh, uh, these well-established NEV brand makers. I won't mention who, but you can kind of guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So that just goes to show that they're still in early innings when it comes to premium, the Chinese EV makers, and their understanding of the Chinese consumer at that price point. Uh, and they're trying to use the same strategy that they do product introduction, all these things that they use for the mass market successfully. And we're talking about a consumer which is buying their third or fourth car. This is not likely the first car, the only car they're going to be driving. So how you market to them, how you engage with them is going to be completely different. Now, they're not necessarily much older than the Chinese consumer that buys the mass market brand or a Xiaomi SU7 or U7, like in the West, where an S-class buyer versus a C-class buyer are there's probably 40 years between those two market segments. You know, a 7 Series buyer versus a 3 or 4 Series buyer. There's a lot of age between that. In China, the age difference might be 15 years, maybe. So, um, so I think
yeah,
and this is where again we talk about brand, because the price war has eroded any semblance of differentiation through brand, through positioning, and it's just who's the latest to ship, because my
there's
assumption is that I'll have all the features that are in the market.
there was a news about the Maserati. Uh, what's the model? Grand Cali? Is that the way to pronounce it? The SUV
Oh yeah, I forget.
selling for
uh,
like 380,000 RMB at a huge discount.
so, so I'm telling my friends here in the United States, I'm like, man, you could get a really nice BMW for super cheap. And they're like, no way. And so I
Uh,
send them pictures and they're like, what? Can't believe
yeah,
it. So,
yeah. Uh,
anyways, hey, I think that's all the questions. But yeah, so next week we should be 9 a.m. again for
yeah,
those that apologies. Last week was 4th of July, lots of going on. Lei had just gotten to China, and that's more on me than him. But happy birthday, America. Belated happy birthday, America. Uh, so, everyone, thank you for joining us. As always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
likewise. Bye bye.